on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, the great Douglas Murray weighs in on the Albanese government's censorship push, and he has some choice words for Senator Jackie Lambie. Also joining me tonight is Kosha Gator and Army Horowitz, and of course, Lefties Losing It tonight before the first break. And we feature tonight a young lady with Piers Morgan, and just a warning, this clip is shocking.
My neck is broken.
No, it's
my
not.
Legs. Look at my legs. Don't do this to me, Piers. It's too early in the morning, Piers. This is too early.
Your wig's come off.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's campaign for greater online censorship has made him into a massive international joke on social media after he complained about those mocking him with memes and fake footage.
Media platforms have a responsibility to make sure that misinformation isn't got out there. I noticed today, for example, on the way up here, they've removed various sites that were up containing fake images of myself superimposed on other people. That's the sort of thing that is going on social media. Social media has a responsibility to do the right thing here.
How shocking. Can you believe that's going on social media? People making fun of the Prime Minister. Really, I mean, this is one of the viral clips that he's inspired as he's trying to use the powers of the state to control free speech online. Do we really need that removed from the internet? Does the PM think he is above mockery? Let's bring in Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, the PM has made himself the subject of mockery with some of his statements. Is it reasonable to expect social media platforms to take down footage like that, that's mocking him, that's obviously doctored and fake?
It is not, I think, for three reasons. So one is the principle of it. Free speech, free expression is the bedrock of a free society. He, as the Prime Minister of Australia, should know that and support that. The second is the legal framework. It doesn't work. There's no way for Australia to impose its laws under this e-safety commissioner and everything on the whole world, because this is a global platform. The internet is borderless by definition, and the legal frameworks aren't aligned across the different countries. And then the third thing is just pragmatically, it won't work. Even if it's sort of like whack-a-mole. You can censor or force through the threat of fines, which has happened, for one platform to take something down in one country. And then with VPN or other platforms or everything else, you're always going to be behind the eight ball. And I think this is about something bigger and using these things as a tool for censorship.
Well, everything you have said is absolutely true. It's just logical statements of fact. And yet we've got the media in this country becoming the biggest cheerleaders of more censorship. Look at this effort from 9 News.
First, X ignored a demand from the E-Safety Commission, and right now it's still refusing to comply with a federal court order to take down that graphic footage of the bishop's stabbing. The defiance of the company's owner, Elon Musk, is clear to see on his own page, launching a bizarre spray against Australia, saying if any country is allowed to censor content for all countries, what's to stop it controlling the entire internet?
Kosha, precisely what part of Elon Musk's explanation there is bizarre, as that journalist claimed? How can any government demand a piece of footage be banned, not just in their country, but around the world?
The only thing bizarre in that is how much media has fallen, how far they've fallen. The whole point of a free press in a free society, again, is to be that forum or that way to bring truth to power, speak truth to power. And I think, we've seen that happen. This is another case in point of how media has really lost its way in terms of the role here. It's ultimately about the nature of power, where all of this, again, is sort of a pretext for government to grab more power and erode civil liberties more. And then I think the media sees itself today as adjacent to that core governmental power. And so they seem to always be covering for the government's heavy-handedness rather than calling question to it.
And though the Nine reporter there was quick to call Musk's very logical explanation bizarre, you would have thought she would have pointed out Jackie Lambie's truly bizarre, unhinged commentary wanting Elon Musk to be behind bars for life.
The E-Safety Commission is pursuing X for a fine of around $780,000. And Pete, this ugly episode could also trigger a political exodus from the platform, starting with Independent Senator Jackie Lambie. She's calling for other MPs to ditch the app as well.
Oh, no. So she mentions Jackie Lambie leaving X, but somehow doesn't mention in her desire, which she has stated repeatedly on television, to have Elon Musk thrown in jail and also the keys thrown away. So that just seems to me bizarre in itself to have Nine, such a cheerleader for more censorship. It's so counterintuitive. And it's not just Nine. Seven were also up to these antics.
Pointing to the mis- and disinformation that spread quickly after the Bondi and Wakely stabbing attacks. Children most at risk. Now,
that is some weapon-grade chutzpah right there, because the misinformation and disinformation that did the greatest damage after the Bondi Junction attack was from Channel 7, who falsely named an innocent man as the attacker. Kosha, I don't understand. I kind of do actually understand why you have so many journalists who should be free speech in their DNA, fighting for the right of people to access the information that's important, but they're all become government propagandists when it comes to this issue.
They have. I think it goes back to that power dynamic issue where they should be on the side of the people and speaking truth to power, holding government officials accountable. I think somewhere along the way they've made that calculus that it's better for them to jump over the fence and be sort of in the lap of the government's power and power in general. We've seen this all throughout history in every society. I think it just is more disappointing, at the least, when we see it in free societies that were formed out of what history has shown us, happens in other societies where the government controls the media.
Well, whilst the government and the media are very keen to get this footage out of that alleged terror incident in Sydney banned, the victim of that alleged terror incident, Bishop Mari Emmanuel, has said that he wants the footage out there. He's provided an affidavit calling for the vision to remain online on X, and he had this to say.
I'm not opposed to the videos remaining on social media. I would be of great concern if people use the attack on me to serve their own political interests to control free speech.
Kosha, he makes a pertinent point there about the right of people to know information. And I do wonder, if we're going to ban this footage, what other alleged terror attacks or terror attacks are going to be banned from the internet? Of course, October 7, there was so much footage of that's online and no one's questioning whether it should be there. Mm-hmm. We had the Burke Street attack in Melbourne, 9/11. So where does this stop? Why is this particular footage so objectionable to the Australian government, but everything else is okay?
It's a very important question, and I think the logical endpoint is that whatever the government deems unsafe or for any reason too challenging to be out there in the public domain. In the age of digital media, you can memory hold things more easily than you couldn't. You're seeing some of that already. I would also point that this actually is a huge wide opening for the right side of the political aisle in all countries to show some contrast and bring some daylight between the left's position and the right's position. They're really not. I would say they're fumbling the ball here with whether it was the online safety bill that was passed under the right side, the Liberal government back under Scott Morrison, or the bill that's on the floor right now, disinformation, misinformation. Coalition is lining up behind it. And, that is a problem because all of this is that you're talking about is a direct consequence of that. If we start to allow government to pick and choose what should be censored and what shouldn't be censored, we're not headed to a good place. And whilst the government's preoccupied with this issue, 5 children yesterday were arrested and charged by Australian Federal Police as part of a counter-terrorism raids in Sydney. The teenagers, one
only 14 years old, have been charged in relation to the alleged terrorist attack. Daily Telegraph reports a WhatsApp group found on the phone of a 16-year-old charged with last week's church stabbing attack led to the discovery of this alleged youth terrorist cell. Kosha, this is something else that's worth noting, and I know a lot of people aren't across these platforms, whether it's X, TikTok, but that's probably not where these sorts of issues are being discussed. They've got all sorts of other platforms where they can, where it's encrypted, and they've got greater protection from law enforcement, and that's the issue really, about how you crack that as opposed to something as public as X.
Yes, X is in the crosshairs of the power structures for many reasons that we know and discuss all the time, and this just creates an opening for them to do that. But it is these other platforms, WhatsApp, Telegram, all of them offer more encryption. But there's also the old-fashioned way that people used to organize clandestine issues or events that they were planning as well. So that might continue. You will once in a while come across somebody who is dumb, like history is littered with dumb criminals alongside smart ones, and they don't use the right thing. I think the bigger dynamic here, the bigger landscape though, is that we've got an issue, we've imported risk. This is a direct consequence of immigration policy and other things into the country. And these platforms fuel that risk because they make it easier to organize things. And then the remedy that the government seems to go for is always going to end up with eroding our civil liberties. It will be cracking down on these platforms and doing these things we just discussed, rather than doing anything to remedy the root of the problem and where it started. And
I would argue punishing innocent, everyday people whilst really not addressing even the symptoms right now, let alone the cause. And I think that's possibly why the Albanese government is so sensitive to this issue, because we have just seen record amounts of immigration. There's been a lot of criticism about whether appropriate checks have been carried out for some of those immigrants, particularly asylum seekers. So, they would much rather us discussing Elon Musk than discussing these issues. Now, on a lighter note, anyone with young people in their household would know that they are communicating and consuming media very differently to how we did it, and they're not watching much TV. This is a report that was in a Financial Review this week showing that teenagers went from watching 75 minutes of TV a day in 2011 to now just 13 minutes. That's an 83% decline. This is true for how young people consume media now, Kosha. It's all through YouTube and podcasts, and they don't listen to the radio. They've got other digital products, and it's something that the media industry is dealing with. Do you see any reversal or halting of this, or is this a road that we're going to keep going down?
I don't, unfortunately, for the traditional media industry. There could be something else in the future that we don't see right now that might challenge these streaming platforms and digital platforms, but it's very hard to see how traditional media will reclaim the power and influence and engagement that they held for the better part of a century. Some that are more savvy are good at pivoting and figuring out how to get their content, and at least the publishing side of media, the content production side of media, getting it onto these platforms. We do that very well at this network. I think others are not as savvy at their digital strategy, and it's going to be difficult. They're relying on legislation, protectionist measures to do that, but I think that's going to go only so far.
I think you're 100% right, and you're right. Sky News has just ticked over 4 million YouTube subscribers. So just one platform where a lot of people are seeing our programs, and so I think mainstream media has got to start embracing what's actually happening instead of trying to use censorship to halt it. That ain't going to halt it. Kosha Gator, thank you so much for your time. Now it's time for Lefties Losing It, and President Biden has been at it again. He's pulled another Ron Burgundy, reading everything in the auto cue, including instructions like pause.
Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years, pause. 4 more years, pause. 4 more years.
No, Joe, you don't read out the instructions, but look at the official White House transcript of that speech where they claim what he said was inaudible. We all heard it. He said, pause.
4 more years. Pause. 4 more years.
And that wasn't the only Biden gaffe.
In a sense, I don't know why we're surprised by Trump. How many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted?
Oh, I think he's well and truly proved it by now, Joe. You cannot be trusted. Now to a drag queen who is indoctrinating young children, not just about trans activism, but pro-Palestinian causes. I have no idea how this is real.
Today what we're going to do is we're going to shout, Free Palestine. Can I hear that? Free Palestine! If you're a drag queen and you know it, shout, Free Palestine! If you're a drag queen and you know it and you really want to show it, you're a drag queen and you know it, shout, Free Palestine! Excellent!
Just one bit of advice for that drag queen: do not try that in Palestine, Gaza or the West Bank, because you would not last 5 minutes. And that advice goes to this next dude as well.
Of the United States. I stand in deep solidarity and grief with everyone here as we feel in our bodies the layered, ongoing colonial violences of the transatlantic slave trade and multiple indigenous genocides and dispossessions that has not only founded this country, but has also made Yale University and many other universities and colleges possible as a capitalist necropolitical machine.
I do wonder whether they know why they're pro-Palestinian activists, because these Ivy League students have no idea.
The main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support. So I came down. I heard there's lots of cops. Some people were saying it was getting dangerous.
Yeah, you need a lot more education than a college charging $70,000 US a year can impart. I'll have to speak to Ami Horowitz about that later in the program. Well, they may not be learning any critical thinking skills or any pertinent facts at these universities, but look at what they are learning. These students protesting via the medium of dance and strings. Of course, they're all in masks outdoors in 2024. I mean, that should not surprise any of us. Now, earlier this week, we brought you footage of Alec Baldwin dealing with a pro-Palestinian activist, and today, that activist who calls herself Crackhead Barney is making news around the world because of this appearance on Piers Morgan's program. And just a warning, this clip may shock you.
My diaper today for you, Pierce. Do you like it?
Do you want to sit down?
Do you see the damage that Alec did to me? Do you see the damage? Look at my arm.
No, you weren't maimed by Alec Baldwin on Monday, were you?
I was maimed.
No, you weren't.
My hand is broken. My neck is broken.
No, it's
my
not.
Leg. Look at my leg. Don't do this to me, Pierce. It's too early in the morning, Pierce. This is too early.
I wish I could say it ended there, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll shut up for you.
I absolutely believe that Palestine should be free, yes.
Oh, okay. And how are we going to do that, Pierce? Give us the answers, Pierce Morgan. Alec Baldwin, look at me. Pierce, honestly. Pierce, look at my body. Look at this. Look at me. Pierce, I was maimed by a white man.
Yep, there's plenty more where that came from. Tomorrow night, 9:30 on Sky News, an entire program devoted to Lefties Losing It. Still to come, the brilliant Douglas Murray takes Jackie Lambie to task. That's not a fair fight, is it? And the rise of Islamist extremism in the West. We can't say we weren't warned. welcome back. Now, on this program, I'm not supposed to have a favourite regular, but I confess I do, and it's this next guest. He's the best-selling author of groundbreaking works, The War on the West, one of the best books you will read, The Madness of Crowds and The Strange Death of Europe. Douglas Murray, let's start in Australia this week. We have the Albanese government going to war against Elon Musk, desperately trying to censor and even ban what they consider violent or hateful or even harmful content. The Australian Prime Minister has called Elon Musk arrogant. His Home Affairs Minister has called him a megalomaniac. And we even have Senator Jackie Lambie, who wants to throw Elon Musk in jail.
So when it comes to the tech billionaire, like I've already said, I think he's a social media knob with no social conscience. He has absolutely no social conscience. Someone like that should be in jail and the key be thrown away. That bloke should not have a right to be out there on his own ideology platform.
Throw him in jail and throw away the key. Douglas, how important is X as a free speech platform? And should bureaucrats like Australia's e-safety commissioner be empowered to take down tweets for our protection?
I think we've just seen there a very good example, Rita, of why Twitter and other free speech platforms are necessary, which is that otherwise you have bureaucrats and others who appoint themselves the boundary beater, the town crier, and much more of the public square. Lambie says that because she thinks that Twitter X owner Elon Musk doesn't have a social conscience, that he should be thrown in jail. Was that just a rhetorical flourish? I don't think so, actually. I think people like her think genuinely that they should have the power to not just police but arrest the public square, and that's an extraordinary demonstration of why members of the public in country after country actually do need to have platforms. X, like every other platform, goodness knows, has its problems, but it's a demonstration of why we need platforms that can effectively live above and alongside these sorts of figures. You know, otherwise we have this just permanent, effectively thumb to our throat of people like Lambie saying, you know, if you don't agree with me and what I've got on board with in, I don't know, the last 6 months, then you're not just reprehensible, you're not just appalling, but you have no place in our society. And unfortunately, as people like her sometimes find out, the people they believe don't have any place in society quite often turn out to be what we used to call the general public.
Now, Douglas, call me cynical, but it seems the government is preoccupied with removing this footage of an alleged terrorist event in Sydney from X because it doesn't want to talk about the broader issues, things like importing hatreds, assimilation issues, and it's looking at censorship as a way to curb these difficult questions and as an answer to polarisation and populism. Can a case be made that if we do have these greater controls on free speech, we will have a less polarised society?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, I should say, I mean, there is a serious problem in the social media age of people getting, it's not just images they shouldn't get, but images we wouldn't have got in the past, particularly brutal images. I'm sometimes stunned when I, open X in the morning and, I see a sort of a stabbing or something. I just sort of think, I didn't need to start the day with that. And I think there is a sort of issue about the filter which the mainstream media used to put on particularly really violent things that we just were told about and we trusted, but we didn't need to see. You remember the old news reporter line of, if you don't want to see this, or look away now. But there was definitely filtering to protect us from ultra-violent scenes. And, that seems certainly to have burst. But what we're really talking about here with issues of scenes like the appalling attack on the Sydney priest is not actually, as far as I see it, people saying we just don't want people to see violent content per se. It is, we don't want you to see this bit of violent content. And it always tilts in one direction. If it had been a white racist sort of killing or assault of a black person or an indigenous person, I would imagine that the authorities would be very, very wary, at least, of saying, no, this footage can't get out there. What I'm saying is there has been a pattern of sort of one-directional desire for censorship. And we all know where that comes from. It comes when officials, politicians, and others don't know what to do with a major problem, and so go on really hard on the secondary problem. The problem here is not the footage of this young man allegedly on camera stabbing at a priest. It is the problem that such a thing would happen in the first place in Sydney in 2024. That's the problem. But people find it so much easier, and I've seen this for 2 decades now, they find it so much easier to go on to secondary problems. What do we do about censorship online? What do we do about online radicalization and much more? No, the problem is one to do with your immigration policies, your integration policies, your radicalization policies, and much more. But that seems to be beyond them. So off they go debating a video.
Well, you wrote about this very thing in your book, The Strange Death of Europe, about the West's self-loathing and the mass immigration that we have seen. That was back in 2017. And you warned that Europe is committing suicide, or at least its leaders had decided to commit suicide. And right as you were releasing that book, we got this warning from the United Arab Emirates Foreign Minister, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who warned that we would see terror attacks coming out of Europe thanks to the ignorance of their leaders and their desperation, I guess, to be politically correct. Let's revisit that particular speech.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
And now, Douglas, we have the police warning Jewish people to hide their Star of David necklaces or threatening to arrest them if they're looking openly Jewish in London. We've got to that point very quickly.
Yes, we have, Rita. As you say, we've got there very quickly. Things have been normalized today, which would have been front page news for weeks, just a few years ago. The fact that, as you say, we have priests being attacked at the altar, we have Jews afraid to walk the streets of Western cities, and so on. The problem here, all of the discussion around this, Rita, as you very well know, everything around it is always fearful because of a number of things. People are fearful about addressing this because sometimes they're afraid of physically for their own safety, and sometimes they're afraid because they're afraid of what they're going to be called. For instance, if you say what our Emirati friend there just said, and you don't have the advantage of being from where he is, dressing as he does, looking as he does, and having his name, you'll be called an Islamophobe and perhaps even a racist. And, for some years I've been thinking about this, and I would say, anyone who doesn't think that there's a problem within Islam doesn't know enough Muslims, and they should really get out there and make some Muslim friends. Because if they knew any Muslims, if they were friends with any Muslims, they'd know that all Muslims know that there's a problem. All Muslims know what our Emirati friend there was talking about. They're not ignorant about it. They know what's happened to their co-religionists, among others. They know how apostates are treated within Islam. They know how reformers are treated. They know how Shia and Sunni are at each other's necks and have been for a millennia and a half. They know this. They know there's a problem. But the only people who can't talk about that are the people of the countries who have been experiencing immigration from Muslim countries in very large numbers. And if that migration was all of secular or secularized, progressive, reformist, open-minded, live and let live, we respect the traditions of the country we're moving into types, then, you know, hallelujah, I'd say, to coin a phrase. But that isn't the case because of our immigration policies, because of our lack of integration policies, because nobody really knows what they're doing with so-called integration policies. We've been importing an awful lot of people, and you can choose your number. We've been importing an awful lot of people who think very differently from you and me and most other people who thought there was a settlement in our countries. There was a poll just the other day in the UK about support of Hamas among British Muslims. And it was only a minority of British Muslims that were willing to condemn or say that they opposed Hamas. Well, that's not a problem for Israel. That's a problem for Britain.
It is, and you are so right. As you know, my family is from a Muslim majority country. We had to flee the Islamists when the Islamic Revolution happened, and this ignorance in the West about the extremist elements within the religion. I'm not talking about Muslims who just follow their faith and are not extremist in any way. We're talking about the Islamists here. The ignorance of that is profound, and it is rooted in this desire to be inclusive and politically correct and not sometimes state the bleeding obvious. And we're seeing this anti-West sentiment over and over again. This example in the UK, Oxford University scrapping its St George's Day event, but hosting an Eid dinner instead. The Telegraph's reporting on the banquet to mark the end of Ramadan, replacing the formal celebration of England's patron saint, which stretched back decades. I mean, this is just a tiny example, Douglas, but we have that happening right here in Australia, where there is this reluctance to celebrate our national holiday, Australia Day, but every other celebration, well, that's embraced.
That's absolutely right. It's astonishing. They'll fly the flag. They'll fly any flag on Oxford Street in London apart from our national flag. You know, the LGBTQIA plus weird fringe of a lobby recently came up with a brand new pride flag, which is one of the ugliest things ever. But no sooner had they invented this ugly flag with a sort of triangle pointing into a weird... anyhow, the point is, no sooner did they come up with this genius marketing ploy than that flag was all throughout Oxford Street, all throughout the centre of London by order of the mayor, Sadiq Khan. You know, we had Ramadan lights up across Oxford Street this year, thanks to Sadiq Khan and others. St George's Day, there doesn't seem to have been a cross of St George in sight. And some of this comes, you know, Rita, I mean, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. Some of it comes very close to home. The college that made this decision at Oxford is my old college, Magdalen. And I read this with amazement, because I'm all for being inclusive. I'm all for saying, you know, if we have students of different backgrounds, we'll have you know, they can have a celebration here, the Jewish students here, the Christian students here, the Muslim students there. But part of the point of freedom of religion is that you don't force other people into following your rules. And this decision, not just not to celebrate St. George's Day, but to celebrate the end of Ramadan, is a dinner, the dinner in hall to celebrate Ramadan. This is where all of the students and the professors have dinner. And I'll tell you a sign that this is about something other than just being nice to each other. The dinner was non-alcoholic. Nobody could drink at the dinner in respect to Ramadan. Now, I can tell you, Rita, having spent a number of years in that institution, the idea of a dinner at my college with no alcohol is absolutely foreign to me. I wouldn't recognize it. I reckon that most people will be in utter shock at that. But the point is that there's a serious thing underneath this. You know, you want to celebrate your religion and not drink, fine. But you know, your religion is not my religion. So if I want to drink at the dinner, I should have the right to do so and not have to change my habits to be in line with your religious beliefs. But this is another example, just the latest, Rita, as you well know, is this is just the latest of this thing of it's all said to be equality, and it's not about equality, it's about something else.
And a lot of it is about submission. Particularly if you live in a Muslim majority country, as I did for a number of years. Now, finally, I got to touch on this wonderful piece you wrote about the triumph of the brilliant and brave headmistress of the exceptional free school in the UK called Michaela. I've had Catherine Birbalsingh on this program. She has just achieved the most remarkable academic results for her students, many of whom come from the most disadvantaged socioeconomic groups, and yet she has been relentlessly attacked. Tell me about this latest campaign against her and her school and her triumph.
Yes, I mean, she set up this school more than 10 years ago. As you said, it's not only incredibly diverse, but comprised of people, children from very deprived socioeconomic circumstances. The school has proved itself in an unbelievable way. It now outperforms almost any other schools in the country. And she has shown, Catherine Birbalsingh has shown, that you don't need a lot of money to improve education. Goodness knows they don't have any more money than any other school, in fact, rather less. But what you need is discipline, dedicated teachers, and being taught the basics of your what will become your personality, rather than, you know, you've got a magic personality, tell us all about it, you 8-year-old. The school has performed exceptionally. It's demonstrably. All the other schools set up at the same time by sort of leftist doctrinaires have failed miserably, and this school has excelled. They were recently taken to court by a Muslim pupil and her parents because this school believes in there being no place for religion in the school. Said that there couldn't be mass prayers of, I mean, it all connects, doesn't it? Couldn't be mass prayers by Muslim students in the playground. They tested this, they went against the school, and eventually the family amazingly found money, I don't know where from, to take the school to court, and it went all the way to the High Court. Catherine Birbalsingh won, and the school won, on the basis that the family knew that they were signing up not to a madrasa, but to a school that wanted to have religious boundaries. And Catherine Birbalsingh won. But all of this is to say there's a very important point here. Why should it be that a school which demonstrates excellence, which has a very clear guiding policy, that has now shown itself in the grade room to be exceptional, why should it be that it's that school that is attacked not just by some Islamists and so on, but by leftists, the teaching unions, the Labour Party and others? Why do they attack this school instead of saying, hey, this is so amazing, we want every school to follow this, we want 1,000 Michaela academies in the next 5 years? They do it, Rita, because the success of Catherine Birbalsingh shows the failures of her critics. There is school after school that has tried the left-wing approach to education, and the one that says that you shouldn't have discipline because discipline is bad for the pupils and stops their free expression, and much, much more. No, she has shown up the left-wing trade unions and others to be utterly incapable and inept. And it's not an issue of money, it's an issue of ethos in the school. So I say 3 cheers for Catherine Burblesing, which she should never have been put through these trials, because she's an utter hero.
She is an absolute hero. The trials she went through just to get this school up, because they tried to stop her even before the school began. And the results, as you spoke about, extraordinary, and her students are happy. They love her. They love the school. And it's all about back to basics learning. It strips out the indoctrination. It's about teacher-led learning, not the students letting the lunatics run the asylum. And it works, not surprisingly, it works. Douglas Murray, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Still to come, Ami Horowitz joins me from the US, and we discuss everything from Susan Sarandon to AOC to Clueless, college students, plus why are thousands of Chinese immigrants crossing illegally into the US through the southern border? That's after this. Welcome back. Joining me now is journalist and filmmaker Ami Horowitz. Ami, let's start with actress Susan Sarandon. She's an Oscar winner, and earlier in the week I featured her as a leftie losing it after she led a group of protesting students doing these nonsensical chants. It went on for ages. Anyway, she's revered as a messiah amongst the pro-Palestinian mob, and finally she was confronted about her activism, and I've got to say, I was shocked by what she had to say in response.
I know that all of those myths about babies in ovens and the rapes have all been denied.
I'm sorry.
You're
denying the terror actions that have been made in October 7 to so many innocent civilians.
Ami, she's denying women were raped. She said it's a myth. That shocked me. And I know these Hollywood types are quite often, lunatic, fringe-dwelling lefties. But that surprised me as someone who's been a women's rights campaigner for a long time to suggest that that's all just made up.
Yeah, Susan Sarandon have dropped the veneer of simply being anti-Israel, but being an open anti-Semite a while ago. Look, believe all women, right? That's the mantra. Or you could believe the New York Times. I'm sure Susan Sarandon's Bible that interviewed 150 rape victims, rape counselors, medical emergency personnel, and actually had video of the rapes that happened. You could do that, or you could believe Hamas, because that's essentially what she's doing. He says, she says, is that what's going on here? I mean, I say she should go to Gaza for a day, see what happens to her, and then see all her friends on the left deny it ever happened. I mean, me too, unless you're a Jew. I can go on and on and on. This is sick, sick stuff. Susan Sarandon has to be banned from the film industry for life for these positions. People have done less, much less than that, and have gotten destroyed by the film community. Why not her? Certainly, she should be.
I can't see that happening, and she's hardly alone in holding these views, as we've learnt in recent months. Columbia University, the protests there have spilled over into other college campuses across America. Let's have a look at some footage from these protests. This is from Harvard, Columbia, University of Southern California, and the University of Texas in Austin. I played a clip in Lefties Losing It. I'm going to play a bit of it for you here. College students who were asked why they were protesting.
The main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
My goodness, but there are other students who are all too aware of what they want, the utter destruction of Israel for one. Have a look at these students and what they're chanting here about burning Tel Aviv to the ground. Army, your response to all that? I mean, that last group was chanting for Hamas.
I mean, look, at a certain point, words start to just fail us, right? I mean, what we're seeing here is so egregious, so disgusting. And again, this is not people being critical of Israel. This is open anti-Semitism calling for the destruction and killing of Jews, right? I mean, Rita, you remember my video where I went to a college campus here in the US with hidden cameras and I raised money to murder Jews across America. I raised money from these lunatics, from these evil lunatics to kill Jews, blow up Jewish schools, blow up Jewish hospitals. This is what we're dealing with. And Rita, I want to make another point on this because I think what some people may fail to grasp this very clear axiom, which is that the people who hate Jews in Israel, you know who they also hate? They hate America. And if you did a Venn diagram of the people who are anti-Israel, the people who are protesting in these campuses, and you ask them the same question, do you hate the United States? The Venn diagram, the two diagrams with the exact same circles. They are burning American flags there too, by the way. That's also flags that are being burned. So you're talking about an institutional problem that these universities have. And by the way, you know whose fault it is? The university's fault. These professors, these administrators have been feeding these students garbage for years. Garbage in, garbage out. What do you expect? Look, that NYU student, I mean, I thought NYU was hard to get into. She's a clear moron, right? This is what the problem is. They're literally stopping Jews. These people are stopping Jews from entering the university campuses, from going to classes. How this is legal and how they are not. Look, the police have been called to some campuses. They have to clear all of them out now, and they have to expel them from all of these campuses. Expel them, Rita.
Well, that's what's happening in Texas, even in Lefty Austin. The authorities have gone in and they've been quite swift in getting into action there. Before you go, I've got to ask you about the border crisis. It's a topic we speak about just about every week, and it must be particularly bad because even NBC is reporting on it. And they are talking about illegal immigrants coming from far and wide into the US from that southern border, from African countries and from China.
3 years ago, 689 Chinese migrants crossed the southern border. Last year, that number soared to over 37,000, part of an explosion of migrants coming here from all over the globe. Currently, most migrants are released into the U.S. to wait often years for asylum hearings. Critics say that encourages migrants to come, and President Biden should change course through executive action.
More than 37,000 from China, and that doesn't include the ones who come undetected. Why are they coming through that southern border? And I guess when you have more than 2 million coming in every year illegally, 37,000 doesn't seem like a lot. But why are Chinese immigrants crossing illegally?
If people don't realize, they're the fourth largest minority group moving into the U.S. across the border. They're actually the fastest growing group among the people coming across the border. And that's a great question. Why? Well, I'll tell you this, that the CCP, the Chinese government, passed a law a few years ago that says it compels, a national security law, that compels any Chinese living in another country must report and spy if asked by the Chinese government. And actually, over the last 20 years, more than 40% of all the spies arrested in the U.S. were private citizens that were compelled to spy for the Chinese. So, look, am I saying all 40,000 are spies? I'm not saying that. Am I saying a certain percentage are spies? Absolutely. You better believe it.
Yeah. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time this evening. And that's it for me. I'll see you tomorrow night for Lefties Losing It at 9:30 and Sunday morning for Outsiders. Good night.